Professor X has had a lot of adventures across the multiverse, although I will say his alternate versions tend to either meet a tragic fate in most realities or otherwise just see him turn evil. In this reality, Charles and Magneto are not the ones to become Onslaught, but instead Jean and Magneto are. Like many other versions of Chuck that exist across the multiverse, this one dies earlier on, which causes events in this reality to splinter off and change. In the fight against Magneto, Charles ends up dead, and it is when this happens that Jean's latent and supreme powerful psychic abilities spark. This happens of course because Charles was the one who had put up barriers in Jean's mind to protect her from this awesome power that she has. When he dies, the barriers basically go with him. Jean is the one who ends up shutting down Magneto's mind, and as a result the two psyches merge to create this universe, Earth 696's version of Onslaught. This version of Charles and Jean and Onslaught first appeared in original X-Men issue number 1, which only came out last year in 2023. Who would you like to see combined together to give us an Onslaught, and what do you think would be different about that? A truly nasty version of Charles, this alternate version is known as Herr Xavier. In this reality, known as Earth 597, the Germans instead won World War II, which changes things quite a bit. The Professor X we see here becomes a villain who is responsible for taking out Angel and Beast. Instead of the X-Men, we have the Xmen, which is made up of some of our standard X-Men members that we're familiar with from Earth 616. And we also have their opposing team, Lightning Force, which is also made up of different characters who parallel the current members of the Excalibur team. This version of Charles first appeared in the Excalibur one-shot Excalibur Weird War 3. On Earth 12, all heroes, even mutant heroes, are basically treated like celebrities, Professor X included. This version of Charles hails from the same reality as Calvin Rankin from the multiversal reality-hopping Exiles team. In fact, Charles was actually Calvin Rankin, aka Mimic's mentor on Earth 12, before he went off and was recruited to join the Exiles. In this reality, Calvin ended up going on to lead the X-Men thanks to Professor X's mentorship. When Blink heads to this reality to return Calvin's body after his death during his time serving on the Exiles team, this version of Professor X actually offers Blink a place with his own X-Men. Unfortunately, Blink was called to help save another reality, and so she could not accept Charles's offer. I love visiting the 1602 reality. Here, Professor X is known as Carlos Xavier. He would end up running a school that sought to find and recruit Witchbreed, which are like mutants kind of in the 1602 reality. The 1602 reality takes place in that very same year that it gets its name from, while also being known in terms of its designated reality number as Earth 311. This reality's creation resulted from Captain America being banished, sent through time by Purple Man to be lost so that he would become MIA, and to avoid the fallout from the hero's destruction, which would then of course have made Cap a martyr, a symbol for the people that Purple Man was oppressing to rally around. This was after Purple Man had basically come to rule the world, or a version of it anyways. As a result, the past was changed and Marvel's heroes started appearing sooner in comparison to when they showed up in the Earth 616 reality, in terms of our timelines. Kane, Marco, and Professor X end up becoming friends in this reality, often known as MC2. It's believed that they share the same origin as their Earth 616 counterparts, but instead Juggernaut ended up reforming later on in life. Actually kind of like what's been happening recently in the comics with Juggernaut. This version of Charles made his first appearance in a flashback in the Wild Thing series in issue number 5. Wild Thing is a series that follows the adventures of the daughters of Logan and Elektra. In the MC2 reality, aka Earth 982, you see we get to explore what the world could be like if superheroes were basically allowed to age, retire, and settle down. This is also where Spider-Girl comes from. This one is pretty great, but also pretty goofy in some respects. In this world and what if story, we answer the question, what if Professor X had become the Juggernaut? In case you were wondering, we would get an extremely beefy version of Charles here. Honestly, I do think this story is pretty interesting too. When Kane was about to touch the gem of Sidorak, instead, Charles pushes him out of the way and he accidentally comes into contact with it. This grants him the powers of the Juggernaut, but also, like Kane, he gets trapped in the cave following the cave-in that ensues. When he finally emerges as the Juggernaut, he'll face off against Magneto, who is threatening the United Nations, and he'll ultimately beat him and then convince Magneto's team, the Brotherhood of of evil mutants to become the X-Men and work with and for Charles. With this X-Men team, Juggernaut would in essence conquer the world, protecting mutants but, not really caring so much about the fate of humans. Eventually, the X-Men and Magneto work together to overthrow Charles and send him hurtling through space. This all goes down in the second series of What If in issue number 13 if you wanted to check it out. This version of Charles, also known as MODOK, hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality, or AOA. AOA, aka Earth 295, was created as the result of Charles Xavier's death happening. This happening early also puts events in motion that basically allow Apocalypse to seize power, with him going on to rule the world, hence why we call it Age of Apocalypse. So if Charles is dead here, how does he become MODOK? Well, this specific version of Chuck is not actually the original version, but is instead a clone, or at least a clone of Xavier's brain, who apparently has no will of his own, and just, he's MODOK. It looks great. Looks like MODOK to me. This version of Professor X hails from the alternate reality of Earth 804, as glimpsed briefly in What If issue number 20 from the first What If comic series. Here we see the answer to the question, what if the Avengers had fought the Kree-Skrull War without Rick Jones? Unlike many other realities, Charles actually doesn't die here, but Rick Jones does. Charles also doesn't even become evil here, how cool. And the events here actually force Charles to take a more prominent role in this story, where he ends up as a leader for Earth and all of its heroes in their fight against the Kree, who are basically attempting to conquer the planet. This version of Charles Xavier hails from the Mutant X reality. Havoc gets transported to this reality after he seemingly dies in the comics. Instead though, his psyche was basically thrown through the multiverse and into the body of another Havoc in another reality. This Havoc had seemingly just died when the Earth 616 version of the character entered his mind and his body, allowing him to live on. Earth 616 Havoc would go on to live basically a whole life in the Mutant X reality, meeting tons of alternate versions of the 616 characters, including Madeline Pryor, who would become his wife, and whom he would also have a son with. What is it with Havoc and having children that exist solely in alternate realities? That is a weird thing that Havoc has. He gets to know them and then he's like, anyways, back to 616. Here, Havoc was the sole Summers brother who lived as well. Professor X was one of the characters from this reality, and obviously we're going to talk about him. Xavier becomes a villain in the Mutant X reality known as Earth 1298 after being corrupted by the Shadow King. Yeah, this version of Charles is one of the evil ones. He goes on to team up with Sinister at one point in a plot to take the power of all of Earth's telepaths for himself. Pretty evil. This plot ends up actually being so evil, so dastardly, so deadly, that Sinister even turns on Xavier, attempting to stop him. You know your plot is evil when Mr. Sinister's like, you know what, actually, I think I'm gonna stop you there. This is just a fun little goofy one, and I feel like a really fun way to end this video. In this universe, the X-Men are instead known as the Rexmen. Here, they're all doggos. This appearance of Charles comes from one of the little short stories seen in Millennial Visions. Always a fun and bizarre, just comic collection of stories to revisit. This story was titled Universe Rex. Here, Professor Rex's Rex Dogs team includes dog versions of Colossus, Bishop, Storm, Gambit, Wolverine, and Banshee. Wild.
Coming in at number 10 is Ice Master. In the alternate dimension of Earth 13729, an older, really old version of Bobby Drake has gone full Gandalf, sporting tattered robes and a cloak with the whole long gray hair and bushy ice beard. He now goes by Professor Drake, or even the name Ice Master. Ice Master traveled across realities to Earth 616 to warn Iceman about who to trust and about future decisions. He knew he was running out of time, but he got what he needed to be done. He disappeared into thin air pretty soon after the conversation was over, presumably going back to his reality, or maybe the conversation erased his reality entirely in a paradox kind of way. Maybe that's not how it works. Maybe it's Maybelline. We'll never know. Number 9. The movies. Yeah, I'm talking about the X-Men movies with Shawn Ashmore as Bobby Drake. Unlike a lot of other realities, including the main 616 universe, this version of Bobby Drake was not the youngest founding member of the X-Men. Instead, Bobby is introduced as a student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and also as the immediate love interest for Rogue, similar to the Ultimate Universe. He even made her an ice crystal shaped like a rose! So cute! He doesn't actually do a whole lot in the first movie though, other than being impersonated by Mystique to get Rogue to leave the school. In the second movie, he is definitely a bit more involved and he reveals his mutation to his parents, but again, he is kinda treated like a kid and a side character, and so is Rogue, and they don't really do much. In the third movie, by the final battle, Bobby is finally standing as an official X-Man. It's here that he comes face to face with his rival slash former best friend, Pyro, and completely overpowers him, headbutting the hotshot after taking on his ice form for the first time in those movies. It only took 3 movies, but he got there. And then, lastly, in Days of Future Past, which opens in a post-apocalyptic 2023, actually, I didn't know that, Bobby is one of the last surviving X-Men and free mutants, and he participates in the team's attempt to change the past, defending them alongside the other surviving X-Men. He dies twice in this movie, but thanks to time travel, he's all good, so let's hope we get to see him again, maybe in Deadpool 3. Number 8, King Ice. Yeah, you know we're talking about an amalgam comic yet again. When Doctor Strange Fate, aka a mix of Doctor Strange from Marvel and Dr. Fate from DC, attempted to merge the Prime Marvel universe and the DC universe to reform the amalgam universe, he took both the X-Men and the Justice League of America and slapped them together with some sticky tack, chewing gum, and some duct tape. This created a whole slew of really awesome amalgamated characters, one of which would be King Ice, aka a blending of both Iceman and Aquaman. He and the others were used to confront Access and Doctor Strange, but were pretty much ineffective. Once Doctor Strange Fate was defeated and the amalgam universe restored, the combined people were split, but I still can't help but think this makes a whole lot of sense with Iceman using the moisture around him to fuel his powers, and Aquaman, well, he's Aquaman. Number 7, 1602. In a dystopian and alternate future, the villain Purple Man used his powers to become president and take control of America. Trying to eliminate any opposition, he decided to send Captain America to the Elizabethan times instead of just, I don't know, putting him 6 feet under, I guess. Whatever the silly reason was, this had an unexpected effect. When Cap wound up in the 1600s, it created another divergent timeline, one in which present-day heroes already emerged in the 17th century, the year 1602 to be precise. Mutants in this timeline were referred to as Witchbreed, and as such were feared and hunted by the Inquisition. Just as Iceman is a mainline original X-Man, he is also part of this alternate timeline's X-Men team as well. The counterpart of Iceman was called Roberto Trefusis, and despite his young age, he showed a great control over his power. Roberto managed to encase an entire sailing ship in a block of ice and was able to turn rain into an ice storm. Roberto also claimed to have served as cabin boy for the famous Sir Francis Drake, who happened to be his uncle. With the whole Drake last name, that kind of makes sense. Number 6, Age of Apocalypse. In the Age of Apocalypse reality, it was Magneto who originally founded and trained the X-Men, thanks to some tomfoolery by the mutant Legion. Bobby Drake, being among the first mutants Magneto recruited, was pushed by the Master of Magnetism much harder than Xavier would have, making the youngest X-Man drop his joking, kid-like attitude and tap into his full potential. And he really did tap into it. Iceman in this universe was responsible for defeating Eunice, freezing him, then shattering the leader of Apocalypse's Infinites. And he played a big part facing Apocalypse's Horsemen. Later, Iceman revealed himself as Sinister Iceman, and united with Archangel, who had become the new Apocalypse. Bobby was as cold as ice in this universe, and that pun is intended. And he had no qualms about ending lives. As a villain, he began going around taking out X-Force members, like when he shattered Deadpool and was trying to delete Wolverine from life, but his actions were in vain because Warren Worthington, Archangel, regained his real personality. After that, Bobby, alongside Dark Beast and a few others from the Age of Apocalypse reality, traveled to Earth 616, where he specifically hid in Madripoor, enjoying his time away from his chaotic reality and hiding from his universe's Nightcrawler, who had joined up with X-Force and was hunting down the other traitors from his reality. It wasn't too long before Nightcrawler caught up with Bobby, and things got a little heated, shall we say. Number 5, Ultimate Iceman. In the the Ultimate Marvel continuity, Bobby Drake is the youngest founding member of the X-Men, like he should be. He ran away from his family at the peak of government-supported Sentinel attacks, trying to save his family from their wrath. Now, Bobby was found by the X-Men on their very first mission, where he ends up being the one to save the day when he freezes a Sentinel, preventing it from falling on and taking out innocent bystanders. Bobby pretty quickly proved himself as a valuable asset, single-handedly taking out the Ultimates once with a gigantic ice wall, and stopping an invasion by Colonel Wraith and Weapon X all by himself. He was only able to be stopped by Rogue, who was his on-again, off-again girlfriend and in temporary possession of Marvel Girl's telepathy at the time. Professor X has stated that Bobby is one of the 3 most powerful X-Men, which is pretty accurate in most realities. Number 4. Dark Iceman. Back in 2005, the Scarlet Witch's creation of the House of M enabled the Shadow King of Earth 616 to escape to an alternate reality, Earth 6141. The Shadow King here possessed that version of Professor X and then corrupted his team of original X-Men, creating Shadow X. He maintained constant telepathic contact and control over them and forced them to take the lives of all the heroes of their world. Professor X and Shadow X killed all the other paranormal beings in their native reality before coming to Earth 616 as a result of M-Day. The members of Shadow X, including Iceman, faced off against New Excalibur and were eventually defeated by them. Shadow X was then sent to prison, where they were contacted by members of Black Air, who arranged for their release, and they eventually met with the possible world conqueror Albion to join forces. Eventually, the members of Shadow X were released from their mind control with the passing of Professor X, and they defected away from Black Air and Albion and teamed up with New Excalibur. One by one, the members of Shadow X were unfortunately taken out by the Shadow Captains until only Bobby remained. With his friends gone, he used his mutant powers to their fullest until he finally had nothing left to give and he passed away in battle. Number 3. Earth X. Like most of the other characters from the Earth X reality, a lot of Iceman's early history mirrors that of his Earth 616 counterpart up until the release of the Terrigen Mists on the world. All of humanity was mutated, and Bobby was among the many heroes trying to help people in a world gripped by chaos and anarchy. And one of the ways that he did this was by teaming up with former X-Men Angel and delivering groceries to those who were not powerful enough to safely leave their homes, which is actually quite sweet when you think about it. At some point in this timeline, Bobby lost the ability to transform back into his human form, as in, he was constantly in his ice form. So, to avoid melting, Iceman was forced to go north, where he, no joke, constructed a winter wonderland at the top of the world, where he came to reside alongside the nearby Inuit peoples. Fast forward quite a bit, and Galactus eventually destroys the celestial embryo that is growing in the Earth's core. This alters the planet's mass and pushed the planet out of its regular orbit. As you can imagine, the planet began to suffer catastrophic environmental changes. The temperature in New York dropped to freezing Arctic temperatures, and so Bobby could return to New York and be reunited with Angel. Yay! The two heroes would aid the law in protecting the Human Torch in New York, which would be under constant attack by followers of the Church of Immortus. Eventually, thanks to the Absorbing Man, the Earth returned to normal, and Iceman most likely went back up north, but he did show up for the wedding between Medusa and King Britain, and with his former X-Men, which is kinda nice. Number 2. House of M. In the timeline created by the Scarlet Witch, known as the House of M, Bobby definitely does things quite a bit differently. When his mutant powers first ever manifested, Bobby kept them a secret from everyone but his parents. Turns out that he should have kept it from them too. Bobby's own father turned him over to the authorities when the Human-Mutant War began because he thought he would be safer in custody than hunted as a renegade. I don't know about that one. Bitter over his betrayal, Bobby was more than happy to join up with none other than Apocalypse when the Ancient Mutant freed Bobby during a raid on the Alamo Mutant Camp. After the war ended, with Magneto becoming the new ruler of the globe, the Master of Magnetism gave North Africa to Apocalypse, and Iceman continued to serve his savior loyally as one of his horsemen. We know that the horsemen always get some kind of upgrade to their powers. I'm not sure if I'm wrong about this, but we actually never learn how Iceman's powers were augmented, and that really annoys me. Either way, Iceman helped to secure the human population of the area, forcing them to rebuild Egyptian monuments. Eventually, Iceman was one of the mutants who volunteered to accompany Apocalypse when Magneto authorized authorize the invasion of Wakanda. He distracted Sunfire, Storm, and Namor, freezing the latter two long enough to allow Apocalypse to get past them, but he took a brutal attack from Sunfire, and it's actually pretty unclear whether or not Sunfire completely destroyed him. We know that Iceman has been able to reform himself from being evaporated, so who can really say? Not me. Number 1, Draa, King of Ice. Iceman is an original X-Men, the youngest of them, but he isn't exactly the most popular of them, so unfortunately that means that while he does have lots of alternate selves, they don't always really get a lot of focus, and they're kinda just there in the background. But that doesn't mean they can't still be totally awesome, and that is definitely the case with Draa, King of Ice. In Extreme X-Men from 2012, an X-Men team made up of Dazzler, Emmeline Frost Summers, General James Howlett, Kurt Wagner, and a floating Charles Xavier head make their way to the alternate Earth 20329. Here, the Earth is ruled by Thor, God of Thunder, alongside and under the direction of 5 other mutant gods: Storm, Skybreaker, and Allmother, Warren, as in Worthington, the Herald, Sawtooth, Sabretooth, Lord of the Wild, Namor, God of the Sea, and finally, Draa, King of Ice. Draa, I'm assuming, is derived from Bobby Drake's last name, and now with such familiar names, you'd assume these gods would be friendly, but it turns out that they are being mind controlled by their world's Charles Xavier, who is pretending to lead a resistance against them. As for Draa specifically, I believe he has 2 throwaway lines total, and is for the most part just silent and standing in the background looking totally awesome and godlike. And for that, he's making this list.
At number 10 is X-24. In the dark and twisted multiverse of comic book adaptations, we've seen our fair share of alternate versions of our beloved characters, but in the film Logan, this sinister creation was engineered to be the ultimate unaliving machine, a nightmarish mirror image of Wolverine himself. Unlike the brooding and complex Logan we know, X-24 is a ruthless berserker devoid of any moral compass. See, he wasn't played by inner demons or a sense of duty, he was a pure force of destruction, and what made him even more terrifying was his relentless pursuit of Laura, or X-23, who shared Wolverine's blood. Every time X-24 appeared on screen, a wave of anxiety washed over myself, knowing that this unrelenting monster would stop at nothing to achieve its grisly objectives. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 9 is Zombieverse Wolverine. In the eerie expanse of the multiverse, we stumble upon a spine-chilling variant of Wolverine, who's a zombie. Venture into Earth Z, or Earth 2149, a nightmarish realm in which this gruesome iteration, Wolverine's fate, takes a sinister twist as he, along with a select other few heroes, feast upon the remains of the cosmic entity Galactus. But it doesn't stop there. The unholy banquet bestows upon zombie Wolverine the dreaded power cosmic. Damn, picture it. The relentless savagery of Wolverine as a zombie, fueled with the limitless might of the cosmos. It's a ghastly unison that transforms Logan into a nightmarish force, a walking apocalypse with claws and a cosmic energy at his disposal. This incarnation of Wolverine sends shivers down the spine, reminding us that within the multiverse, terror knows no bounds. At number 8 is the Lord of the Vampires. This spine-chilling incarnation of Logan emerged from the pages of the What If series, specifically in Volume 2, Issue 24. Here, a fateful turn of events sees Storm choosing to stay by Dracula's side during the X-Men's clash with the infamous Vampire Lord. The consequences were world-altering, as Wolverine and his fellow heroes fell victim to capture and transformation. Yet the adamantium-laced warrior's indomitable will proved way too powerful for Dracula's control. In a gruesome twist, Wolverine overcame the Vampire Lord, seizing the throne and becoming the new Lord of the Vampires. Picture Wolverine with fangs, ruling over legions of bloodsuckers, and capable of enslaving anyone with a single bite. It's a nightmarish blend of clawed ferocity and a moral bloodlust that would haunt even the most fearless of souls. At number 7 is Cancerverse Wolverine. Cancerverse Wolverine is a denizen of Earth 10011, remains a shadowy figure in the Marvel Universe. In this eerie reality known as the Cancerverse, the Grim Reaper has been utterly obliterated, and in the absence of the unalive, paradoxically, it gave birth to a cosmic nightmare. Cancerverse multiverse, Wolverine's appearance alone is enough to send shivers down your spine. In a world where mortality is non-existent, life spirals into a grotesque spectacle, a chilling reflection of the importance of balance in the universe. Because in this twisted realm, even a hero like Wolverine becomes a harbinger of terror, a reminder that the natural order of things, no matter how unsettling, always has its rightful place. At number 6 is Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan is a haunting iteration of Wolverine, emerging from Earth 8071-28. In this chilling reality, the claws of tragedy run deep. See, Logan was once a hero who now carries the crushing weight of guilt upon his adamantium-laced shoulders. Mysterio's sinister dissipation led him down a path of unwitting euthanization, annihilating his fellow X-Men. Time catapults us into a future where Logan has abandoned his iconic alias, opting simply for his first name to escape the specter of his past. But destiny refuses to release his grip. Logan attempts to evade heroics, settling into a family life, yet peril relentlessly pursues him. When the ruthless Hulk gang eliminates his loved ones over the late protection money, Logan's dormant savagery ignites. The descent into vengeance becomes an inescapable plunge, culminating in a gory reckoning that liberates his world from the clutches of the deranged Pappy Banner and his nightmarish clan. In the desolate landscape of Old Man Logan's reality, even heroes succumb to darkness, making it one of the most spine-tingling alternate Wolverines in the multiverse. And at number 5, my personal favorite is Old Man Venom. Enter the Venomverse, where unimaginable transformations await. In this universe, we get to see Old Man Logan devoured by a venom-infested T-Rex. But here's the twist. The symbiote decides that Logan is a superior host and merges with him. The result is Venom Wolverine, or as I like to call him, Old Man Venom, a character oozing with insanity, ethics thrown out the window, and an utter disregard for consequences. Sure, he might have a laundry list of symbiote vulnerabilities, making him marginally less formidable than your typical regenerating Logan, but the sheer terror he instills is undeniable. Venom Wolverine is a monstrous fusion of two iconic characters, delving into a spine-tingling combination of ferocity and chaos. Next time you delve into alternate realities, keep an eye out for this hair-raising incarnation of Wolverine. At number 4 is Wolverine Noir. In the shadowy realms of this alternate universe, we stumble upon Jim Logan, a character shrouded in mystery and intrigue. This noir iteration of Wolverine takes us on a journey through the Marvel Noirverse, offering a distinctive twist on the iconic mutant. In this iteration, Logan isn't a berserker on the battlefield, but a detective navigating the murky waters of crime. It's a fitting role for a man with heightened senses and a knack for tracking. Wolverine Noir paints a gritty picture of reminiscent of classic noir films, amplifying the eerie ambience that defines this universe. This version delves into Wolverine's past, mirroring the harrowing narrative from his origin series. Raised by a fervently religious father, Jim's childhood is the haunting tale of sermons and strife, shaping his path into the detective he becomes. So while we've seen Logan in countless forms, Jim Logan's chilling incarnation stands out as one of the most intriguing and unsettling alternate versions of this iconic character. At number 3 is Phoenix Wolverine. In the realm of eerie alternate Wolverines, the incarnation known as Phoenix Logan takes a chilling spot on our list. Picture a grim future where Thor ascends to the All-Father status and Loki, the ever-malevolent trickster, decimates humanity just to torment his brother. In this apocalyptic landscape, Wolverine, after his own demise, becomes a new vessel for the awe-inspiring Phoenix Force. With this cosmic power coursing through his adamantium-laced veins, Wolverine exhibits an array of mind-bending abilities, even at one point going as far as to save Loki from the formidable Celestials. However, the terror takes on a different twist when a future iteration of Dr. Doom crosses this Wolverine's path, obliterating him. Yet thanks to the Phoenix Force, his demise is merely a minor setback. To secure Dr. Doom's defeat, Logan willingly sacrifices himself, channeling his power through Thor's mighty Mjolnir in the relentless battle. At number 2 is Akihiro. Akihiro, also known as Daken or Fang, is a chilling alternate version of Wolverine. During the Dark Reign storyline, when Norman Osborn took control of the comics, Daken emerges as a sinister counterpart. See, Osborn had formed Hammer and the Dark Avengers, a team comprised of rebranded villains as Avengers replacements. While Osborn attempted to recruit original Avengers, most of them declined. Daken, however, joined as Dark Wolverine. Akihiro might not currently be villainous, but during that time, he was a bona fide baddie. What makes him terrifying in the series is his lack of a moral code, even compared to his father, who isn't known for his strength. Daken, like Wolverine, is a highly skilled fighter and assassin, groomed from childhood to be a lethal weapon for Romulus against Logan. This alternate version of Wolverine is a dark reflection of the iconic hero. And at number 1 is Dark Claw. Darkclaw, a fusion of Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman from the Amalgam universe, is undeniably one of the scariest alternate versions of Wolverine. Imagine the brooding intensity of Batman mixed with the raw, animalistic ferocity of Wolverine. It's a chilling combination, and Darkclaw inherits Bruce Wayne's wealth and tragic backstory, ensuring that he's a complex and deeply haunted character. But what truly sets him apart is his adamantium-coated skeleton and healing factor borrowed from Wolverine, obviously. This mending of two iconic, fear-inducing heroes creates a formidable force. Darkclaw embodies the fear of the night, blending the relentless pursuit of justice with the untamed power of Wolverine's regenerative abilities and his claws. Crossing paths with Logan Wayne would send shivers down anyone's spine.
Number 10, Age of X. There isn't really an exact X-Men team in this reality, but there are the Force Warriors, so I guess we could consider them as an X-Men alternate? In Age of X, we learn of Earth 11326. Here, there was no Professor Xavier to bring mutants together, uniting them. As a result, anti-mutant sentiments grew, and following the Phoenix disaster, mutants were on the brink of extinction in the US, thanks to national and honestly global persecution. However, some were able to rise up and join the Mutant Liberation Front, fighting to protect their kind. Eventually, the mutants were unified by Magneto, who brought them together at a place he built called Fortress X. During the siege of the fortress, each night barriers protecting the place would be rebuilt by the Force Warriors, a team of psionic mutant powerhouses including Legion, Hellion, Betsy Braddock's Psylocke, Carmela Unnasion's Standoff, and finally, Rachel Summers' Revenant. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about alternate versions of alternate characters, well guess what? We got a whole playlist filled with that, so you can go check that out and learn even more. Number 9, Witchbreed. The Witchbreed hails from Earth 311. They are mutants of that reality. Witchbreed is a term given to anyone who basically kind of has powers in that reality, but while some of these characters are villains, not all of them are bad. In fact, the Witchbreed team is made up of mutants who attempt to help others, who are good, and yet who are mistreated just because of who they are, like them. The Earth 311 reality is known as 1602, named after the year it's set in. The team here is led by Carlos Xavier, and members include the Angel, Hal McCoy, Petro, Sister Wanda, Scotty is Summerisle, Roberto Trefusis, and Jean Grey, who is disguised as a boy and going by John Grey. Number 8, Hellions. Okay, so this one isn't technically an alternate version of the X-Men, but they are from the main continuity. But even discounting that, because I have talked about main reality alternate versions of the X-Men in the past and included them on my list, counting them according to my own self-defined parameters for the list, this team also isn't technically a version of the X-Men specifically. They're just a different mutant group in the main continuity, but I love them so much, and they are a mutant team, and they certainly can be scary if you get on their bad side. Hellions is a team that was made up of those mutants that Krakoa didn't quite know what to do with, considering them too troublesome to deal with. As such, Mr. Sinister suggested that they band these problematic, less stable mutants together, petitioning to have them as his own team that he could then, rehabilitate. Use! Under the leadership of Quanon, who goes by Psylocke, herself considered a somewhat problematic mutant due to her past and her weird connection for many years with Betsy Braddock, who is now Captain Britain. This team is probably one of my favorite mutant teams I have ever read in the comics, and despite them all kind of being scarily unhinged at the start, I came to love every single member of this team by the end of this series. This version of the Hellions includes Wild Child, Orphan Maker, Nanny, John Greycrow, Havoc, and a former member of Emma Frost's Hellions, Empath. Number 7, Naughty X-Men. I don't know, just the idea that this team exists out there in the multiverse kind of scares me. It's not so much that these X-Men were created to be a sexy variant, it's more that they hail from the bizarre world of the Mojoverse. But also, think of the ratings! Initially, I of course thought that Mojo had created them solely for that purpose, but apparently he did not. They were simply an alternate version of the team that auditioned to replace the Earth 616 team after they seemingly died. Even Mojo wasn't feeling it and ordered them to be dumped, likely implying that they should be permanently removed. after they auditioned for him. Number 6, Marvel Zombies. What makes the Marvel Zombies reality version of the X-Men so scary? How about the fact that most of them were killed off, and those that did survive became bloodthirsty zombies? I think the idea of that should be enough to make your blood run cold. Marvel Zombies is a brutal reality known as Earth Z or Earth 2149. While we don't know much about what this world was like before the zombies arrived, it's expected that for the most part it was pretty similar to Earth 616, except for a few minor differences as far as I can tell. The X-Men end up getting attacked early on by Alpha Flight, and those members of the team that survive then go on to fight alongside one of the last standing mutants of the living, Magneto, who becomes sort of like their new leader in this reality. Also, I gotta say, you know you're in some bleak reality when Magneto becomes the leader of the X-Men. I feel like I have yet to see a reality where he leads the X-Men that is without some extreme element of darkness, other than of course the main continuity. Number 5, Dark Reign. During the Dark Reign event, we didn't just have a Dark Avengers team. We also had a Dark X-Men team as well. Dark Reign was an event that happened in 2009. It followed Secret Invasion. After Norman Osborn was broadcast on live television taking out the threat of the Skrull Queen, Varanki, who led the Skrull invasion of Earth, Norman was celebrated as a hero. Surprised? I know. He was made the head of the organization created to replace S.H.I.E.L.D., which at this time was fully debunked. Norman named his organization Hammer and created his own Dark Avengers team. As with his Dark Avengers team, the Dark X-Men team members were also selected by Osborn, for the most part anyway. The team included Mystique, Emma Frost, who was Black Queen at the time, Namor, Dawkins Wolverine, Mimic, Omega, Cloak, and Dagger, who have both been, I think, disputed mutants in the past, and the alternate version of Hank McCoy known as Dark Beast, who hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality. Number 4, New Dark X-Men. Madeline Pryor leads this new team of Dark X-Men. The team was put together by her when she felt compelled to take action. As Madeline says to Havoc in issue number 1 of Dark X-Men, "You should know by now that I'll wage war against anyone if I think it's just." Donning her new Crown of Mercy. Yep, Maddie gets her own team of X-Men in the second volume of Dark X-Men, which began just this year in 2023. As of issue number 2, the team has grown to include Havoc, Gambit, Maggot, Azazel, Monet's brother Marius St. Croix as M-Plate, New Mutant Feint from Children of the Atom, where she was formerly introduced as Gimmick, and Zero, who actually possesses Wolverine's android clone, Albert. What a weird, wacky series. I really need to add this one to my reading list. Sounds great to me. Number 3, Gamma Earth. The fate of the X-Men here was tragic, hence why I'm including them here on my list. They hail from the reality we get a glimpse into in Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley's Hulk series from 2021, and it's issue number 5. Here we get to see what a future world is like after it has been fully gamma irradiated thanks to gamma bombs that went off the world over. This is because in this reality, Banner was able to test the bomb, not needing to actually save Rick Jones. As such, the bomb testing continued to the point that the weapon was perfected, handed over to the US military. They used it to do things like wipe out all mutants, considering them a threat. Yikes. Number 2, Reichsmen. The Reichsmen come from a world where Germany and Axis won during World War II. They made their first appearance in Excalibur Weird War 3, issue number 1, and they are about as weird and disturbing as you would imagine them to be. This reality, Earth 597, is also home to the disturbing alternate version of the Excalibur team known as the Lightning Force. The Reichsmen are led by Herr Moira McTaggart, Reichsminister of Genetics, with the team including alternate versions of Havoc, Psylocke, Rogue, Storm, and Banshee. Number 1, Days of Future Past. This X-Men team did not fare so well, so they literally reached back into the past to get help so that their future could be prevented from ever coming to pass. In this reality, known as Days of Future Past, named after the story it appears in, or as designated reality number Earth 811, mutants end up being hunted down by Sentinels who take over. Not only are the X-Men almost all gone or dead or otherwise locked up and contained for being mutants, as well as all of the mutant population, stripped of their rights and freedoms, but non-mutant superheroes were also wiped out as well. It's truly a bleak reality. This team of X-Men is able to get a message back to their past selves thanks to the help of Wolverine, who breaks them out, giving Rachel Summers and Kitty Pryde in this timeline enough cover for Kitty to travel back in time through her own consciousness.
Just when you thought you've seen it all, Marvel throws Monkey Scott Summers into the mix. Sherlock Holmes better watch out because Detective Cyclops is coming for his gig. X-Men Ghost Boxes gave us the gift of Detective Cyclops in 2008. Hailing from Earth 889, this Cyclops is part of a pre-digital culture. He is still protecting the Earth from other dimension threats. This time, the threat is extra-dimensional mutants that have targeted Earth for annexation. Cyclops is part of the X Society, and they are basically the X-Men. They are the protectors of the Earth. Overall, the world looks super cool and vintage, and I absolutely would choose to live there. The art style is really cool, the story seems interesting, plus the characters are all detectives. Like, what more could you want? What the X Society is investigating here is the intentional passing of a mutant from possibly another universe. Scott is a pretty major player in the short series. At the start of the second comic, he goes on a big, introspective, slightly emotional, depressing, reflective monologue called The Last Testament of Scott Summers. Is Cyclops really still a Cyclops if you replace every piece of him? Remember that thought experiment they brought up in WandaVision, Theseus' paradox? Well, that was Cyclops the X-Sentinel. Earth 1011 exists in the X-Men Millennial Visions. What business do I have bringing up the Theseus thing though? In the comic, it's like a page-long explanation of what's happening and then a big picture of what they just explained. There is a photo of the main X-Men. The attached essay to that picture claims that as the X-Men got older, it was harder for them to heal from battle wounds, but they still wanted to fight and protect the Earth. So they started replacing the parts of themselves too hurt to carry on. Like, the blur breeds, a lower leg or arm is too damaged, no big deal, we'll just replace it. They even downloaded their consciousness into the cybernetic bodies so they could fight forever. Their signature looks were kept so the public knew who was fighting for them, only of course it went wrong. The cybernetic sentinels started breaking down due to an overload of info in their brains and began focusing on their single goal, saving mutant kind. Any threat to mutant kind, even people, had to be eliminated. Is Cyclops still Cyclops if every piece of him is eventually replaced? I think not, but let me know what you think down below. There was once a Cyclops that worked under the Professor X that became Juggernaut. He existed on Earth 905 from Marvel's What If 13. This universe looked pretty bleak for humans. Professor X turning into the Juggernaut caused this whole chain of horrible reactions that led to the Professor crawling out of the rock, a supreme control peacemaker. Mutants ran everything, and humans spent their lives pretty much just living in fear. The Cyclops in this world is married to Jean with 3 kids, and he is still the kind of guy to stand up for all things right and good. So he realizes that humans shouldn't have to live like this, and leaves the Professor Juggernaut's X-Men. So the powers, morals, and love life are pretty much the same as the Scott we know, but this Scott has a different helmet. Instead of the sleek helmet we are used to, he has a bigger one with these like horn-looking things. The Cyclops and X-Men go up against the Professor Juggernaut X-Men and win. Juggernaut gets literally launched into space. There is a reality where everything is the same, but all mutants are of African American descent, including Cyclops. It's Earth 63 and it's super new. It was dreamed up in 2023's Bishop War College. Lucas Bishop accidentally ended up on Earth 63. He gets transported straight to the front gates of Earth 63's School for Gifted Youngsters and remarks that he had seen it all, but was even shocked by the sight in front of him. Scott Summers and Jean Grey are standing right in front of him, and their outfits are very similar to what they usually wear. They just have Wakandan design influences. As far as I can tell, the only difference between this Cyclops and our Cyclops is their history. Otherwise, it's the same powers and everything like that. Cyclops was once on a Deadpool-led team of X-Men. This version of Cyclops was glimpsed in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe issue 4. When Deadpool is jumping around through the nexus of all realities, we see a bunch of different Deadpool variations. One of them is a Professor X-Pool. Professor X-Pool is flanked by Cyclops and Iceman. I don't really want to imagine the implications of combining Professor X and Deadpool, but Cyclops in this universe looks almost exactly the same. The one difference is his super costume is showing a bit more skin. He almost looks like he's wearing a tank top, and I wonder if Deadpool had anything to do with that. There is a Scott Summers out there known as Psych. He comes from the year 2000, originating in the Big Town comics. This world is known as Earth 110. In this universe, Summers presumably has all the same powers. He is still seen wearing his visor. His outfit looks a bit different. It has what looks like a V on the chest and some enormous shoulder pads. Psych was part of a gang of mutant thugs called the Mutants. They worked out of and controlled Newark, New Jersey. On Earth 616, Professor X and Cyclops are super close. The Professor is like a father to Cyclops. They are a super important relationship in the comics. However, in fact, on Earth 110, they are more likely to scrap with each other. The Mutts often fight with the X Squad. They did fight alongside them once out of necessity when Doctor Doom attacked. After the allyship was over and Doctor Doctor Doom was defeated, the Mutts were offered the opportunity to join the super team, the X Squad. However, they refused. There's a Cyclops out there with his eyes positioned vertically instead of horizontally. The first issue of Howard the Duck Volume 6 showed a brief appearance of Cyclops, but he looked a little different. His visor was vertical instead of horizontal. That implies that his eyes were vertical instead of horizontal. We don't know if this is just another mutation that Cyclops has and he's the only one, or if everyone in his world has it, we only see him. In the panel where we see him, this guy opens a wizard portal that shows a bunch of different universes. So we also see an evil Squirrel Girl, a Spider-Gwen Batman, scraggly Captain America, and Duck Iron Man. This Cyclops doesn't have a known universe designation because he's only been seen that one random time. Marvel gave us the gift of an Elizabethan Cyclops. His name is amazing. It is Scotius Summerisle, and he is a Witchbreed. This takes place in 2003's Marvel 1602. The entire comic takes place in the last bit of the era, and literally everybody is there. I love it when Marvel writers have fun. The backstory for Scotius is that he worked on boats as a kid until his Witchbreed status was revealed. When that was found out, he wasn't treated very well, but before anything permanent happened, Scotius was found by Carlos Xavier to go to his school. Also, Professor Carlos calls the team his mutantor. Iconic. He still met Jean Grey and fell in love with her, but she had to pretend to be a man. It was a whole thing, don't ask. On a mission, Scotius and Roberto, or Iceman, save Angel from the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. In this world, Scotius doesn't really have a visor, it's more just like a pair of cool sunglasses. Overall, I gave them a 10 out of 10, especially Scotius Summerisle. Cyclops looks like a prince already, and he actually was one once. In Uncanny X-Men 153, or Kitty's Fairy Tale, Cyclops plays the noble prince in the story Kitty Concocts. It's a fitting role for the X-Men. He rules over a faraway land and was set to marry none other than the enchanted princess Jean Grey. But then the kingdom was under attack, and Jean allied herself with the primal cosmic forces to save the city, but they made her turn evil, turn into the Dark Phoenix. It started slowly, but eventually the once gentle princess became evil and cursed her friend and fiance. In this world, Jean gave Scott his Eyes of Death, as they are called there. The prince and wizard, Xavier, fled the kingdom together, the wizard giving the prince his fancy blindfold. The pair continued to track the evil princess. Their mistake, she attacked them once they found her, or she found them. The other members of the X-Men get picked up along the way. There is a big final battle, like all the X-Men comics have, and then Jean Grey's pure soul takes over, returning the evil Dark Phoenix soul to the primal energies of the cosmos. When the Phoenix is gone, Cyclops' eyes return to normal, him and Jean get married finally, and they all lived happily ever after. The Monkeyverse is Earth 8101. It's apparently very similar to Earth 616, aside from all the monkeys. Monkey Cyclops is on the X-Simians. They fought the Beyonder to make this already wild world even wilder. There were vampire invaders at one point, and Monkey Cyclops had to help fight them off. He did so using all the same powers that 616 Cyclops has access to. The Monkeyverse has only shown up a handful of times, mainly in Marvel Apes volumes, which is unsurprising to say the least. I think Monkey Cyclops looks pretty interesting, and I would love to see more of him. There are thousands of Magnetos across the multiverse. Some versions would shock even the biggest Magneto fan. There is a steampunk version of Magneto, and that is the coolest thing I have ever seen. He originates from Earth 20,329, or Steampunk Godworld. Love that name, we should make it into a theme park. Steampunk Godworld comes from Extreme X-Men Volume 2 and also the year 2012. This is the sort of world that could only come from the year of 2012. The world is ruled by mutant gods, and Charles Xavier is evil, and also his head is in a floating fishbowl. It's amazing. Magneto here goes by Magnus, and he has a mohawk? Kind of. It looks more like a Roman battle helmet. He looks great no matter what is on his head. He also wears a trench coat. Truly, this has gotta be like peak Magneto fashion here. Magnus seems to have the same powers as his 616 counterpart, but better style. I'm kidding, they're both beautiful in their own way. I'm not trying to start fights today. Him and Xavier created a world together that was a secret haven for science and tech and mutants, and all was well until it was discovered that Xavier was evil. Magneto had to end him for that one. Mag Squeedo, the magnetic mosquito, is an actual character, if you can believe it. He originated in Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider him, and that makes this make more sense, I think. Magneto is the main enemy to the X-Bugs. You can probably guess who the X-Bugs are in the 616 universe. The X-Bugs find out about Magneto throwing a bunch of metal around because though he is a mosquito, he still has powerful magnetism abilities. The X-Bugs assume the worst and they go to stop Magneto. The thing is, Magneto wasn't actually doing anything wrong here. He actually decided to leave evil in the past and open a junkyard to sell scrap metal. So all that metal throwing was just him at work contributing to society. The X-Bugs literally show up and ruin his day, but at least they look remorseful when they discover that he wasn't doing anything wrong and he was just vibing at work. Magneto does eventually return to evil though when he is recruited to join a villain squad. He ends up arrested by Sheep for that one. Sheep is S.H.I.E.L.D. in this universe, by the way. The Bee yonder ended up transporting a bunch of heroes and villains off Earth to make them do animal secret wars known as Secret Furs. That's kind of the last time we see him. At first his outfit was more magnet themed. He wore red and blue and had a magnet on his head, but the last time we see him he is wearing the red and purple we've come to associate with Magneto. Magneto and Rogue as a romance is something we've all seen. Some of us wish we hadn't, but it did happen. That's not the only time the two have been close. They were once absorbed into one person. In X-Men Millennial Visions 2 or on Earth 1033, Roguenito was born. So Magneto finds out he has a few months left to live and he throws a temper tantrum all over New York. He starts a war downtown. That's not really what happened. In reality, he realized that he only had a few months left to secure the place of mutants in society and was willing to get there before his death by any means necessary. In an effort to stop the event, Rogue and the X-Men tried to absorb Magneto's powers into her life force so she could attempt to use his powers to stop the fight. She did not account for the sheer amount of traumatic memories he holds in his head, and it was so much she literally got overwhelmed and shut down. Magneto had an opening to take over her body, he took it. So now Magneto is chillin' in the body of a former lover and is back terrorizing the Earth, but as a woman. As a woman who is a member of the X-Men, that causes pretty much all the problems one might expect. Roguenito broke into the High Evolutionaries base in the Savage Land to attempt to find a disease or a virus that would be strong enough to wipe out humans and leave mutants in charge of the world. He did find the disease and it did eliminate a bunch of people, unfortunately. However, it didn't work out completely in his favor as mutants were soon locked up so humans could find a cure. Magneto was still running loose in the Savage Land, so the X-Men that weren't captured went to fight her. We don't know how it ended. The Millennial Visions were just imagined futures, stories that would likely never make it to the page, but were fun for writers to explore. So there are lots of examples of interesting versions of the heroes in there. I like to think though that Roguenito lost that final battle. The X-Sentinel Magneto is real and he will hurt you. I mean, I'm assuming most of us are humans, so he'd probably want to hurt us anyway, but the Sentinel version of him is that times 10. This version is also from the X-Men Millennial Visions, but volume 1 this time. Earth 1011 is a world in which first, the X-Men seem to get along with Magneto, which is great. He is part of the team. The X-Men, though they are mutants, they can still get hurt most of the time. Injuries can be bounced back from, but as the X-Men get older, it's hard to heal and some injuries were too great. So to keep their bodies battle ready, if some part of them went down, it would be replaced with a cybernetic version. Eventually, their entire body was cybernetic and even their minds. The X-Men downloaded their consciousness into their bodies. This comic came out in 2000 and just 10 years later, humanity caught up. They actually did that with a real person, B-I-N-A if you are interested, but back to the mutants though. Their cybernetic bodies were designed to look like the suit of the mutants so that people would recognize them, knew they were on their side. The problem with these cybernetic brains is that they started to overflow with information and break down, leading to the team taking a page out of Magneto's book and existing with their one purpose they were built for, protecting mutant kind by any means necessary. And that meant terrorizing humans and hunting them down just to keep mutants safe. With all the demonic things Magneto has done in his life, it's only fair that he once had what looks like little devil horns on his helmet. Earth 928 exists in X-Men 2099 and it's responsible for maybe Devil Magneto? This Magneto is mentioned in a speech. The speech is about the rights of mutants and the rules of combat that go with it. This Magneto is assumed to have all the same powers of 616 Magneto plus what looks like 2 little horns. Magneto's Magneto's helmet has taken on a lot of different shapes. Earth's 1191's Magneto helmet kind of looks like a scorpion? This world is thought to be more made up. It exists in the X-Men, The Times and Life of Lucas Bishop 3. Bishop is being told a story by his grandmother, so all the characters are drawn in the way a young Bishop might have imagined them. Toad is actually a toad, for example, and Magneto just looks weird. He still leads the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. In this imaginary Kid Bishop world, they were plotting to eliminate a mutant-fearing politician that wanted to, and did, pass anti-mutant laws. Him and the Brotherhood were of course stopped by the X-Men. It was a good thing because then humans started seeing that mutants weren't all evil. The main difference between this universe and 616 is that everyone looks different because they're being imagined by a child. Lots of the events and everything remain the same as they are simply stories being passed through the generations. The Magneto of Earth 1191 seems to have the same backstory and powers as the Magneto of 616. It is time to start monkeying around because Ape Magneto is on the scene. It's Earth 8101 and most of the heroes and villains here are apes. Ape Magneto has the same costume as 616 Magneto and it looks like the same powers. The biggest, possibly only difference between the two is that one is a few steps behind in its evolution. Ape Magneto really isn't in the comics a lot, but he is there just enough that you clock his presence. He was featured in a big battle where the Ape Avengers, Ape X-Men, and Ape Fantastic Four were all trying to defeat the Ape Beyonder. It appears that Ape Magneto and Magneto 616 share similar, if not the exact same power set. With all the antics Magneto gets up to, it's only a matter of time before he became a court jester. Magneto has done a lot of bad things, yet I almost feel bad for him in this situation. The Earth is 9997 from the Earth X comic. This Magneto shares a very similar past with 616 Magneto, but this Magneto has a very different future. The part of note that caught my eye, and is the reason that this Magneto made it on the list, is because Magneto became a jester. It happened during the Universe X moment. Galactus destroyed the celestial embryo that was growing inside the Earth. That of course messed the Earth up. Vibranium was shifting around and it made the Earth's poles shift. Somehow, because of the poles shifting, Magneto and Toad switch powers, so now Toad is one of the most powerful mutants ever, and Magneto is left to suffer to his every whim. Toad made Magneto his jester and treated him the way Magneto treated Toad, so Toad is coming from somewhere with his actions. Magneto's powers were eventually restored and he shockingly forgave Toad. This Magneto is stronger than 616's Magneto simply because he's older and has had more time to get stronger. Magneto was once Enrique. This was the Marvel 1602 story where time travel gone wrong caused our X-Men to exist in the 17th century instead of the 21st century. So everyone has new names, not just Magneto. How we get Enrique from Magneto or even Max? Unclear, but this is taking place during the Spanish Inquisition, so that probably has something to do with it. Magneto 616 is Jewish, but this Magneto was taken as a kid and baptized against his will into the Catholic Church and then kept there and raised there. In this world, mutants are called witchbreeds, and so the usual elimination methods used during the Spanish Inquisition are used on the witchbreeds. Every major thing that happens in the original plot happens here, just with a historical twist. 17th century Magneto became the Grand Inquisitor at his church and he was responsible for targeting witchbreeds, but if a witchbreed blended in, he would kind of just turn the other cheek, like with his kids in this universe. Of course, Enrique does get found out for his witchbreed status and then escapes to America. Enrique has all the same powers of 616 Magneto, but he also has a leg up on him. He has a sick beard. Marvel 1602 or Earth 311 is truly the gift that keeps on giving. I don't know what it is about modern heroes and old-timey outfits, but I love it and I want more. The Magneto of 8311 goes by Magneto and is also a horse. It's the Spider-Ham comics. It would be weirder if something normal happened. Magneto appears in the backup comic Iron Mouse in Peter Porker, The Spectacular Spider-Ham 3. Magneto was a half-hour late returning his tape to the video store. The comic was released in the 80s, so those still existed. But because he was late, he was charged a late fee of $5, which he was not happy about at all. In all fairness, that would be a $14.50 50 charged today. As revenge, Magneto uses his animal magnetism powers to erase the tapes in the store, effectively destroying the shop owner's business. Magneto almost got the Lawrence Elk tapes though, and that did not sit well with an old lady nearby, so she smacked him into a concussion with her umbrella. Magneto disappeared for over 3 decades, then reappeared in 2020 in Spider-Ham 3 in the background of one of the big battles.